All right, it's time to go over the paper that's due in this class to make sure that you know what I expect to ensure that you can get the highest possible grade. It's not a research paper, so I don't want you to use multiple sources. You just use one source. Since there's only one source, there's no bibliography, no works cited, no need to cite things in the body of your paper. You're going to give me a copy of the article or the source that you're using, so you can refer to your source in your paper by talking about, well, the author says this, or the article or the TED Talk says this. That's the way you cite the source in your paper. You're not going to cite other sources because I really don't want you to use other sources. I want you to show me, did you have the ability to summarize one specific piece of scientific literature related to psychology in your own words? And then I want you to show me, did you have the ability to think about it at a deeper level and show me your creative thinking in relationship to that topic, to give me your opinions on the topic, etc. So it's a summary analysis paper. You find one source, you summarize it, and then you analyze it, giving your opinions and your thoughts in a way that shows me your deeper thinking, your ability to think analytically and critically. Now, in terms of sources, I don't want you to use a chapter in a book. I don't want you to use a pamphlet or a brochure or a Hollywood movie or a TV show or anything like that. You can use a TED Talk or something like that, a YouTube video where the person describes something related to scientific psychology. Generally, you want to find a source that has some sort of opinion, debate, or discussion associated with it. If you choose an article that really is just a bunch of information, you're probably not going to be able to give me a whole lot of depth of thinking about that. It helps to find something that's kind of controversial that is debatable in order for your analysis to be good. The article should be, or the source should have an identifiable author. If it's a written source, it should be minimum of 3 pages of text. If you were to take away the graphics and everything else and print it out, size 12 font on like a Word document, it should be minimum of 3 pages of text. It could be quite a bit longer, but it shouldn't be any shorter. You probably don't want to go to the internet and find something, say for instance from WebMD or the National Institute of Mental Health or someplace like that describes a mental illness in the form of a bunch of bullet points or a bunch of just bits of information about, say, a mental illness or something like that, because those don't really have debatable issues or things that you could argue or discuss. They're just really all sorts of information. Students tend to choose those articles because maybe they like mental health issues, mental illness issues, and they're simple and they're easy to understand, but they're not good articles to write an analysis about, so stay away from those. A lot of students choose Psychology Today. So if you were to go online, you could go to psychologytoday.com. You'll find that if you just start searching through it, you'll find a lot of bloggy type stuff, short news type articles, ones without a whole lot of depth to them. And they're just going to be too short for this assignment, so kind of stay away from the blogs. The way to find the full-length articles that are long enough for this paper are to go to, if you're looking at psychologytoday.com, the top menu, there's a item called Magazine. If you click on Magazine, you'll get a drop-down something, and it'll say somewhere in there, Issue Archive. So click on Issue Archive, and then you'll see the first page of a bunch of magazine covers. And if you keep clicking through page after page, there's magazine covers representing magazines for the last several years. If you were to click on any one of those magazine covers, 4 main articles, typically 4 main articles will come up. And each one of those would be long enough to do a paper on. And you'll find that there's just a ton of them that you could use. Now, Psychology Today is not real scientific, but much of the research that is discussed or covered in those four main articles in each issue is backed up by and related to a lot of research that's in the journals. So in that sense, it's a kind of a layperson's easy entry into topics that psychologists and scientists are interested in. In terms of sources, other sources, Scientific American Mind is another one that students tend to use. They don't put all of their articles online like Psychology Today does. It's just a representative sampling of articles that are in the magazine that are online. If you go to Scientific American Mind online, you'll find some articles that you can use. Again, it shouldn't be the newsy or the bloggy shorter ones, but the full-length articles. These articles tend to be more technical, more research-based, and they tend to be better because of that. Let me just tell you that a big part of success in this assignment is picking the right article. It's kind of like Simon Cowell used to say when he was on American Idol, you have to choose the right song. If you don't choose the song that fits your style, your ability to do something with it, then you're not going to do well. The same thing is true with this article. You need to choose one that you have some opinions on, some good understanding about, so that you can show me the depth of your thinking and your analysis. So that's the reason why I want to emphasize it might be a good idea to go online and look through several articles and find the one that best matches your ability, your interest, and your ability to talk about it in depth in your analysis. Other sources would include just Google a favorite topic of yours and wade through a bunch of sources. There will be a bunch of things that are total garbage, others that are too technical, others that just don't fit the kind of article I'm suggesting that you need to use for this paper. But there are some decent things on the internet that you can find just by Googling. And I don't mean a Wikipedia page or something like that. I mean typically an article published on the internet that has an identifiable author that otherwise meets the criteria for this paper. You can go to the ARC online library and look up research databases, psychology journals, and again, you put a keyword or two in a search engine and it'll come back with all sorts of hits. You want to make sure you click the box that says full text. So you don't want to wade through all of the sources that are just abstracts or don't include the full text. And then go through several of them, find the one that best matches your interest level and your ability to talk about it. And again, that can take some time. Definitely part of the assignment is choosing the right article and taking the time to choose one that works for you. Don't be frustrated if it takes a little bit of time to find the right article. That is part of the assignment. All right, let's go to the summary. Now, your job really is to summarize the article, the main points, coherently enough so that I have the ability to understand the article without having to read it. Now, chances are I will have read it or been exposed to it in some way, but you need to assume that I haven't read it, and you need to make it so I don't have to by writing such a good, complete summary. Now, you could take a 3 to 5 page article or even a 10-page article and summarize it in 2 pages. Sometimes that's a challenge for students, in the same way that it's a challenge for students to take appropriate notes for, say, a chapter in a textbook or something like that in a class they're taking in school. I mention that because sometimes I take a look at the textbooks of students who are serious about studying, and when they're annotating their textbook or highlighting it to try to help them remember the things they need to remember, almost everything is highlighted or annotated in some way. And when sometimes I see students write out answers to their chapter study questions, and the answers are huge. They just go on and on, all this detail. But the point of studying something so that you can do well on a test that you're going to have to test your knowledge and your ability to remember the things you're studying, is to condense it down to main points. You need to get rid of all the details, and you need to seek for understanding. And once you have that understanding of the main points, you'll be able to add in the details because you've been exposed to them at least once or twice, and you can think your way through it. The same thing is, let's go back to the paper. You don't want to, in your summary, you don't need to include all the detail, all the facts and information, and even all of the points that the author makes, just the ones that you think give you the gist of the article. Do it in your own words. Now, there's a form of plagiarism that'll get you kicked out of school, and that is to basically cut and paste, copy and paste from internet sources or other sources and put them in your paper and claim the writing as your own. That is not okay at all. I don't find that students do that too often, particularly with my VeriCite element of this paper. Students you turn the article and it goes to VeriCite, and it determines how much of your writing is original. So because of that, most students don't plagiarize in a way that's blatant and in a way that is not okay at all. But there's a form of plagiarism that's pretty common, and that is when students take a sentence and for some reason they feel the need to capture that sentence in their paper. And maybe the sentence says something like, researchers have been pretty excited about all the studies done on the causes of schizophrenia these days. And so maybe the student decides that they want to put that sentence or the thought behind that sentence in their paper. And so they don't want to plagiarize, so they don't copy it word for word. But what they do instead is they say something like, and remember this original sentence was, scientists have been amazed by the research conducted on the causes of schizophrenia. So the way it gets summarized in the paper is, researchers in science and psychology have been really impressed by all the studies done on the things that factor into or cause schizophrenia. Now that is plagiarism in a sense. It's relying too much on the structure and even the overall wording, even if there's a lot of words that have been substituted, relying on too much structure and even the overall wording of the source. So the thing you need to do to avoid something like that is really not to have the article in front of you when you're summarizing it. You should read it and try to understand it, think about it, read it again, and make sure that you got it in your mind so that you can actually talk about it intelligently without having to continually look at it. Put the article away and then start writing about it. And if you have to go back to the article to find a sentence that you literally want to quote and put in there, or to make sure you got a particular fact straight that you want to put in your paper, that's fine. But in general, you should not have the paper, the source, anywhere near you when you're writing about it, to ensure that you're going to use your own style, your own way of wording, your own sentence structure. All right, so that's the summary. I want to make sure that you know that I do grade writing. I'm not an English teacher, but I still think it's very important for me to teach you that writing done well is very important, to make sure you write this to your best possible ability. And it's the finest specimen of your writing that you can come up with. The more you're able to do that, the better your grade is going to be. And now let's move on to the analysis. I do want you to put your opinions and your own thoughts into this paper. That's why it's important for you to find an article that you can discuss and debate and react to in that way. Some of your English teachers will not want you to put your opinions in certain papers that they want you to write. They're going to say, get rid of I statements. But you should go the opposite direction in this paper. I want you to tell me things like, I believe, I think that. The author does make this point, but you know what? I don't really agree with that. And here's the reason why. Opinions without explanations and justifications really are not all that valuable to me. So you do need to give me your opinions along with your additional thinking behind that to justify and explain the reason why you think the way you do. You don't need to come up with other sources and other pieces of evidence to support. I really want you to show me your own thinking. Now, you can use your personal experiences, since I'm not allowing you to use other sources. You can use your personal experiences, the experiences of others. You can even say, I heard once in another psychology class that this is true, and so this is one of the reasons why I believe the way I do. That's okay. That's the way you can kind of work in other pieces of information. But remember, the point is not really what you know here. It's, I want you to show me your thinking. It's helpful, I think, to play devil's advocate and to kind of argue one perspective or take one side and point out, yeah, the author says this, and I can kind of agree with that because of this and that and that. But I kind of also disagree because of this and that and that. And if you have the ability to engage in that kind of dialectical thinking, going back and forth and showing me that you have the ability to take different perspectives, then you're going to show me some depth, and I'm going to appreciate it. So looking at something from multiple perspectives, showing that you have an open mind, but you can also be critical about certain elements of, say, an argument or an issue. It's going to be important to your analysis. Okay, so the paper needs to be 4 full, complete pages of text. If you write something that's shorter than 4 pages, I'm likely going to take out points. Now, if you write something that's 5 or 6 or 7 pages, that's fine. Longer is fine, but just don't make it shorter. Now, the way you do this is when the paper is due, and it's on the syllabus. I'm not going to mention it in the video because I want to make this presentation generic for next semester as well. But the due date is in the syllabus. When it's due, you are to send me via email a copy of the source that you used, either a full copy or a link if it's an electronic source, a link to that source in a separate email. Now, don't put it in with the paper. When you send it to me, that's my cue to go to Canvas and find your paper and start reading it and grading it. If you don't send me a copy of the article or a link to it, then I'm not going to know that you submitted it to Canvas because I don't really get those notifications all that readily. It could sit there for a while and I wouldn't even know it's there. So I want you to send me the copy of your article or a link to it separately in an email, and that's when I will take a look at your paper. When you submit it to Canvas, it will go to VeriCite. And maybe not right away, but sometime within the next hour or two, you'll be able to see the percentage that VeriCite says of your paper it's unoriginal. That seems to be a copy or too close to a copy of what's already on the internet. And when you look at that number, if it's greater than 20%, then you should rewrite the paper and submit it again. Ideally, your percentage is really between 0 and 5, 6, 7%, but I'll accept anything that's less than 20%. So that gives you some leeway. And you're not going to reach 20% if you use a lot of quotes. When you have written something, if you want to send me a copy via email of what you've written, so that I can give you feedback. I'll be glad to give you feedback at any point, except for if it's the last few hours before it's due. Whatever you've got done that you want to give you feedback on, I will look at it and do that and tell you whether I think you're on the right track, whether I think you have an A, B, or C at this point, and then you can make changes, assuming that you left yourself enough time. You can make changes and then let me look at it again or submit it to Canvas. And anyway, that's my way of helping you out to write a paper that I think deserves a good grade so that you know ahead of time whether you're on the right track or not. If you turn it in ahead of time, I will give you some extra credit, and I'll give you that details later on. If you actually submit it ahead of time and tell me this is my finished version, I'll give you extra credit for turning it ahead of time, and that will allow me to kind of scatter the papers over time rather than having a whole glut of papers on the due date and have to read them all within some short amount of time. If I can actually read and grade the paper ahead of the due date, then that makes my life a little easier, and that's the reason why I'm going to give you some extra credit. There's a place to link into the summary analysis paper in the modules where you turn in the paper. There's a place to get into there through the home page. Otherwise, if you just go to the modules, it's in a module where it says summary analysis paper, and where you turn in the paper, there's a copy of a paper that was turned in about a year ago by a student who got an A. Then there's another one who turned in the paper and also got an A. If you read both of those papers, you'll have a better ability of what I'm looking for, to know what I'm looking for. Don't use the articles that they use, but just look at those papers to see the kind of writing and the kind of thinking that I value, that I would consider is at the A level. That should help you. And of course, if you have any questions at any time, make sure you email me and let me know, and I'll try to help you along. Okay, have a good time. I do enjoy reading the papers. It's a big chore for me. But I enjoy reading the perspectives of students and seeing how they think, and being impressed. Usually there are papers that impress me, and I really enjoy that. So anyway, have a good time and do a good job. Thanks.